Cool. So, hi everyone. Anshul Sahni here, and okay. So today I'll be talking about building interactive documentation with MDX. It's more sort of a talk focused on how exactly to move forward or start with the MDX part, most of the part only. I thought of building. I thought of sharing the whole document, like how to build a whole documentation website, like a full blown docs with MDX, but I just realized in between that couldn't go with that. So I just thought that stick to the introduction part first. Probably in the future talks, I might give more things related to the documentation, which are like things around happening around the MDX. Sure. So okay, something a little bit about me. My name is Anshul, and I'm working as a UI developer in Razorpay right now. I'll complete almost 5 years in this December there. um, I've been working on React since almost start of my career, which is almost like 7 years now. And right now in Razorpay, I am working on something called Razorpay Docs, which is a documentation of the Razorpay, which involves documentation related to all the products, whether the internal dashboards or the APIs, the SDKs. So anything and everything about Razorpay products can be found on Razorpay Docs. And yep, that's somewhere right now I'm working. Cool. So I'm not a very a very continuous open source contributor or something. I do sometimes very small contributions and all. So, but yeah, I do have a maintained GitHub profile. And I'm sorry, I just realized that the GitHub handle which I've given is having a little mistake, spelling mistake. So please don't go to that. I'll just give an updated one after some time. Cool. So starting with the talk, we all starting with the talk will just for the first step let's start with the markdown. What exactly is the markdown? I guess most of you would be knowing, but I would still give you some very small facts about it. So markdown is like it's a markup to write formatted text. It was created by Aaron Swartz and John Gruber around like they released this thing in 2000, somewhere around 2004. There was not a formal spec until for very long. So because of that, have been many extensions have been given to the Markdown spec, and the original or the standard Markdown, which is also known by the name Common Mark, has basic syntaxes, very basic ones like they have 6 level of headings, basic text formatting, bold, italic, strike through, block quotes, list, and then few things like code blocks, images, links, and unescaped text. If you're wondering, table is not part of here. So, yep, table is not part of the formal or the original Markdown spec. It's an extension, which we will get to know a little in the next slide. So, several companies and several libraries have come up with extending the Markdown, and one of the very famous one is GitHub flavored Markdown. I guess most of us have written tables, checkbox, the to-do list, and sometimes footnotes in our PR descriptions. And so that's not the standard Markdown or the original Markdown, which was released by the original creators. It was a flavor added by GitHub. And then there are others. One we have is R Markdown, which is added by the R library maintainers, and it is basically giving the capabilities of charts and all the things which the R can do with data in Markdown. There are some others which are for extending the maths formulae or some things into the Markdown. Recently, GitHub also added support for math formulae in Markdown. But I guess more popular ones are based on latex. So yep, so there are several extensions, and some of the examples of extended syntaxes is table, one of the very famous ones, which almost seems like a standard syntax now. Then there are definition lists and something footnotes. Yep, GitHub flavored Markdown supports footnotes also. I got to know few days back, and yes, cool. So okay, so we have Markdown. So what exactly is MDX then? So MDX is an extension of Markdown. as you can read it, it's Markdown plus JSX. And so MDX gives the capability to write the JSX components or the JSX syntaxes or inside Markdown, which is basically helping us to make our documentation interactive, or let's say anything. Let's say if we are adding blogs or if you're going on with something else in Markdown, to add the interactive flavor, the JSX gives an awesome support there. And combining this, something came up called .mdx. Some of the very common basic features. First of all, you can map a component of your choice against every syntax. So you can have a proper, let's say, a component marked for H1 syntax, or a component mapped for a link syntax. In similar way, you can have like interactive or any kind of component, interactive or non-interactive, against every syntax which is available in Markdown. Then the second feature, which is the most highlighted feature of MDX, is letting you add JSX components there. So let's say if you are writing a blog, and in between, if you want to add a comment section or an interactive a video or an iframe. So instead of and you want it to be in a React manner, or let's say with some other programming language, you can write in between inside your content in Markdown, rather than just templatizing all the Markdown and trying to wrap around things and adding your JSX components or anything which is required there in a different manner outside the whole content. It also has one more very good feature. It lets you validate JavaScript expressions if they are written enclosed within curly braces. So if you write inside curly braces 1 plus 2, and when you evaluate it, the document or the final document which will come up will, instead of telling 1 plus 2, it will be displaying 3 there. So that's another highlight. Then the best part, it's any JSX library, any library which is having the support for JSX syntax. Markdown, the MDX is having support for that, whether it's React, Vue.js, Preact, or any other. If there are more JSX, original JSX libraries, they also do have, the MDX does have a support for adding components there. Then the best part, the conversion of MDX to JS, which is the final JavaScript, which is basically shown to the user in the form of a web page. Between those, in that journey, there are several stages, and each of that stage, like one or two of the stage, are basically having support for adding custom hooks, or the hooks, so that you can modify the AST cycle in between and can add your own syntaxes. So let's say if you're willing to add a syntax of your own using MDX, you can go ahead and add it. One example could be, if you want to add a Twitter, an example for a plugin for adding a tweet. So you can add your own custom Markdown syntax, and with the help of MDX, you can map that syntax to a particular component or in a certain direction, and then that way you will be basically able to embed the tweets within your content in using MDX. So here comes the most important part. I've talked a lot about MDX till now. How exactly does the integration happen? What all things are required? So, okay. So in this, I'll be using the example with Webpack and React, but the specialty with MDX is that it is having loaders for almost all the popular bundlers, which is ESBuild, Rollup, or any other. And then, as I've told already, that it is having support for any JSX based library. So it has plugins for Vue, it has plugins for Preact, and React is by default. So since this is a React meetup, in the demo part or in the tutorial part, I'll be going ahead with the React and Webpack integration. So the first step is, as it for any Webpack, in any Webpack application, for any file, any new file, you need to add a loader. So there is a Mdxjs Loader, which is provided by MDX only. It's a Webpack loader. You have to map it to .mdx files. So I'll just show us code snippet for that. The example here I have taken is with Next.js. I like setting up Next.js since it's very easy to set up. I like it much better than create React app. So I generally go for that. Now for Next.js, there is an internal integration by Next.js given for MDX, which is a little better than the original one. But still, I have for the example one, I have taken the one for going by a original way, the way Webpack is integrated. So I'm overriding the Webpack rules for MDX here, and this is how I'm doing. If you are going for a Next.js application in production with MDX, I would suggest you to use the Next.js MDX loader rather than using this one, because it has certain extra functionality which lets you do that things much better way. But yeah, for the demo part, I'm just using the original Mdxjs loader. So inside Webpack, you have to add a rule for .mdx files. Always remember to add the Babel loader also, because ultimately the JXX support MDX loader will help you to convert Markdown to JSX or Markdown to React part. But like originally and understanding or the interpretation of JSX to the original JavaScript will happen via Babel only. So always add the support, otherwise this wouldn't work. I would advise to keep the configurations related to Babel as similar to as you have in with your .jsx or .tsx files. But if you feel that there are certain differences you want to keep in your MDX loading and your JSX loading, it's perfectly upon you. But in a standard manner, the Babel configuration for JSX and MDX would remain same. So coming on to our original loader, this is the one specifying the loader, and here are some options. We'll read about these options separately in a while. Each of these options stand for something important. Next step, to configure React. So we have configured loader, the Webpack loader. Now the next step is to configure Mdxjs React. So basically tell the MDX loader that the React is the library which is being used in here. Now by default, MDX understand that this is going to be React application, and by default it considers if you provide nothing, it will consider that this is going to be React application. But in case of other applications, let's say for Vue.js or for Preact, you have to specify in a parameter called Jsx import source. There you have to specify whether this is React or whether this is Preact or Vue. But if you are not providing anything, the MDX would consider it to be React by default. So you might not need this. This is not a mandatory thing. Without this, also the MDX and React would work with by just specifying the loader. But this is required for using the context provider. So this is basically provide import source. If you are a provider import source, so if you are going to use a provider, a context provider for React, you have to provide, you have to specify explicitly that use Mdxjs React in provider import source. So yep, these are the two steps which are required, and actually your configuration part is done now. You can start coding your application. So now the next step. So as I told in my earlier slides, that for every syntax we can provide a component, an interactive React component against every syntax. So this is how we would be doing it. You can either use MDX provider or you can directly provide the map of these components. Let's see the example. I've used the example with MDX provider. So with wrap all the content inside your MDX provider, and to your MDX provider you can map the kind of JSON, the kind of object which I have shown here, where for H1 I have created a component same named as same H1, and for A tags, which are links, I have created a component called link, and for P I have specified it paragraph. So all these components will receive the content written inside them as props, and then that would be rendered in whatever manner you would like to, by wrapping it in some other kind of markup which is different from default, or adding some states or adding some other reactivity. adding some other interactivity which you would like to have. Let's see one example. How exactly do we do that? So I've taken 3 examples of how to use MDX with React. This is the first one, which is a very basic one. So this is the Markdown I have written here. I've written one H1, then some content, then this is H2, a sample link. Here is H3, and here comes the a long content. And so all of these are different syntaxes. And here I am importing this content .mdx, just like we import any React component or any other JSX file. Just the thing is that you'll have to specify .mdx because it's a file extension different from JSX or JS. So we'll have to specify explicitly MDX extension. And to the Webpack loader, which we have just used, Webpack would understand how to import this content in what manner. Here is the MDX provider, which I was talking. It is the context provider. And you'll have to wrap your content inside this context provider. Here is the contents. And here comes the main part, the components map. So these are different components, which I have mapped around different syntaxes. Let's see one of few of them. So this is the H1. I just did nothing. I added one extra function, small functionality with H1. I am inside heading 1. I am rendering the children, which is the original content. I'm rendering it inside H1 tag, and I've added a small link to basically make the heading as a simple hyperlink. I'm making it a hyperlink. We'll see how exactly it is helping us here. And I am converting whatever children they have been given. So I'm assuming that the children going to come under in the string format only. If you are making a production application, please do make sure that you are not receiving any component inside it and just string. So this is the thing, and that's how I am removing all the space and replacing it with underscore, so that I can create a small hyperlink with this heading. Now, and yep, so when we'll be rendering this, this is the page which is being rendered from the earlier from the page which we just saw. So this is the heading 1, welcome to MDX1, and this is the link. So what is happening that we have seen in many documentations, for every heading, they make it a link and they make it an in-page link. Now I have not done that because I forgot to just add an ID here, but this is how it is done, that it creates an in-page link, also called as anchors, and also add a small hashtag around it to basically signify that this is a link, and if you link it, you will be having you will be navigate it, or you will make this heading as a main, you will navigate it in a certain manner. So this is how you can transform your headings. Whereas if this wouldn't have been there, let's say there's the mapping is not there for H3, but I am using it in my content. So in case of that, it would be a by default, whatever MDX is providing, a simple header. You can see here, there is no link or nothing given here. But in heading 1 and heading 2, I'm giving a heading. I'm also modifying it with some CSS. I've given a slight color here. And this is how things would change. Now, if you go for the link, a sample link I've created, the component here is this one. And in case of link, there are 2 types of props. One is href, which is the link itself, and the children. The children would be the title of the link. So whatever you're providing inside the square brackets, that would be coming as the children, and the actual link or the hyperlink would be coming in href prop. So when you render it, you will basically be rendering it like this. The content is here and the href is given here. I added a simple, let's say, an interaction kind of thing, this pure CSS thing, where on hovering it is giving a yellow color. So modifying the styles a little bit. Now with paragraph also, I did some formatting. I thought that I'll create one small component for one of the syntaxes. So we have seen this syntax being used. Generally, this is being nowadays used in Slack, or sometimes in by GitHub, and even by Stack Overflow also, for highlighting this thing. Though the original intent of this syntax was to basically write a code so that code can be written inside the code can be written inside in a pre-formatted way, so that the original rendering, most of the Markdown libraries do it in a pre-tag where there is no formatting happening from the HTML side. The content is being rendered as it is. But many of people, I've seen that now the usage has been a little different. It is being used to highlight the text or highlight whatever we are writing. So similarly, I'll just create a component, highlight.jsx. I'll not be taking too much time here. So simple is ready. I'll change the CSS here. And here we can, okay, so the original intent of this syntax, as I said, was for writing the code. It is still known by the code parameter, but as we have seen, we are modifying it little. So we are converting it into highlight. So I guess there should be, oh, yeah. Now, yeah, you can see, not a very good styling, just a working one, but this is enough to say that we have like modified the syntax from its original behavior a little bit. And we can basically, this way we can also change the behavior of the syntaxes. So we are not always writing documentations or content for technical audience. Sometimes the content we are writing is for different kind of audience also, and still that can require some kind of highlight or pre-formatted text to be shown. I've seen that being used in Slack a lot, people sharing links or different kinds of text in the highlight format, though that's not, the people are not having a technical conversation. So it's not necessary that we always have to render the content in a certain manner only for a technical audience. So that way we can use this to do some other things also, as we have done in this particular syntax. Now you can see that the content is being rendered inside class paragraph, because every new line or certain text formatters as part of Markdown are considered are rendered always in as part of paragraph. This is not the case with headings, but this is the case with, let's say, if bold text is being rendered, or as we have seen, a code text is being rendered, it will always come into the paragraph. So it is taking the paragraph component also, and then inside it, it is taking the code component. Cool. Yep. So wrapping the content inside inside MDX provider, you can. It's not necessary to use always this MDX provider. If you do not want to use this MDX provider, you can also provide components as map to the contents directly, and this would also work. I hope this should work. Okay, this is not working. I don't know why. Oh, spelling mistake. Yep. So you can see this way also. This way, if you want, I'm not sure about the use case right now, but we can have a different set of components for different types of content. And we can also have, inside the single page, we can have two different sets of Markdown pages being rendered. Moving to the second part. Using component inside Markdown. So this is the main thing. So you would see that the above feature which was there, it is not something very special. This I'm assuming, I've not seen, but I'm assuming that there must be other Markdown libraries based on React which would be giving that kind of functionality, where they are mapping the syntaxes against a component. That's like something probably would have come here, would have already been there. But this is the main feature of .mdx files, that you can write component within your Markdown content. Um, so I have another example for that. So most of the time, as we are working in, we are building docs. We have always a section of FAQs within the content, and the design team or the tech or a separate team of content writers which write this Markdown. They always come to us and say that we want to write a FAQ kind of thing, and there are other requirements of coming up with different kinds of syntaxes or components, and everything is not possible through syntaxes. Let's say if you want to add a collapsible within your content, or a tab kind of feature within your content, it's not easy to introduce new syntaxes, even though it is the facility is being given by MDX. So in that scenario, the better way to basically go would be the better way to go with would be adding support for or using the components inside the Markdown directly, and this is how we can use it. So here I've taken an example of an FAQ. This is again Markdown file .mdx. This is having a heading, and here you can see the beauty of it. This is an import statement for importing the component, and this is a JSX. So within your MDX component, you have a JSX written there, and this is how this component looks. It's a simple React component. It is having a little interactivity. Basically, it's a kind of a collapsible. I have used React Bootstrap Collapse for the collapsible component. Then it takes two props. One is question, FAQ, of course, question would be there. And answers, people can provide it as, or the user can provide it as a children. So the answer is in within the collapsible, and the question is the heading of the component. So you can use it. Now you can here see that what happens when you click here is the question, and this is the answer, which would be visible only when you click on it, because this is inside the collapsible. Cool. So I would go. And okay, the usage, it's simple as we have seen in other place. Um, Using the provider, importing the content, and providing the map of the components. And yep, this is a simple usage, and inside that we can use a component. Now if you go to this is weird, I don't know what is happening. Now yep, so this is rendered out of a Markdown file, both the content coming from within the Markdown. You can see if you click on here, this is just a simple question and an answer return. So we right now added an interactive component in the Markdown without adding too much complexity inside. So the easier the components are to be used, to the wider audience you can provide it. In Razorpay, we are having a separate team of content writers which are authoring these docs. They are using Markdown. They know how to write Markdown, but they do not know how to write React. So for them, we are creating components which are very easy, which are having one or two props and are very straightforward in their behavior. And so the easier the components you build, you can give it to a non-technical audience also, who can author these. There is another way of one of the complexity we felt with tech writers was that they do not really know this import statement. They can learn this, but these content writers, these folks are completely from non-tech background. It's easy for them to learn a syntax, but not a statement and where there is an ambiguity. They do not know from where this would come. They will have to understand the whole structure, the path, and everything. So that would be a little complexity. So you can remove the usage of this import statement completely from your Markdown files. You don't need this. This is an optional part. You can remove it, and in your place where you're providing all the component here, you can provide a syntax for here. You can import FAQ here. Now this page is generally, of course, maintained by developers, so there is no problem in going ahead with this. So you can provide, this also gives a nice user experience where there is no import statements, and your Markdown files are clean. So even if you are from a tech background, it's always good to have a clean content page. We save it here. and then we save it here. This should work. Yep. Yep. So there is no change. Everything is working still fine. You can provide the components as props also. So these are the two ways of using the components inside the Markdown file. Cool. There's nothing complexity in there. We just have component support, and MDX is doing all the magic. So nothing to write anything more or nothing to tell you more. We can just use the components. It's as simple as saying as simple as that. This is my favorite part. So architecture, I'm not going to be going to explain you in detail, but this is important to understand the next step, which is creating your own custom plugins for Markdown. So let's understand in very brief what exactly is happening when Markdown is getting converted to the web page which we are seeing right now here. So what happens? .mdx files. What this MDX does is basically it converts it into a AST tree called MDST, Markdown abstract subtract tree. Okay, I am an abstract syntax tree. I'm sorry, MDST, and from MDST, next step is to pass it through Remark. Now, Remark is a library for playing with the Markdown AST trees, and it is being used by other libraries also to provide you with letting you add the plugins of your own choice, that kind of support. So MDX does the same. It provides you Markdown MDX Remark plugin support, and at this stage, you can write your own plugin. And the next step would be transformed MDST. So you can modify the AST in your own way so that it works according to your own wish, and this way you can add your own syntaxes. The next step is basically converting MDST into HAST, which is HTML abstract syntax tree. From there, the JS transformation would happen. The next step would be that. But between that, again, there is a library called Rehype. Rehype again lets you play with HTML ASTs, and the MDX is providing you that support also. You can in between add your own Rehype plugins, modify your HAST, and next step would be a transformed HAST, which would be, of course, your own HAST, where you would have made your changes. And from there, the other changes happens. There's something called ESAST. I have not mentioned that here because that's not really important. Those things go beyond the introduction part. So there, then the other next steps happen. If you're really interested, there's an MDX playground which MDX provide. It gives you each and every step of what is happening with your content. So when you're, let's say, writing this here, um, it gets compiled into something called this. This is the JS file or the JavaScript which is going to the browser. But in between, it has also shown you different ASTs which is going in this process. So this is MAST syntax. You can see what exactly your content, how it's going to look inside the inside your ASTs, and you can transform it to write it in your own way. This is again HAST for HTML, and the final step is ESAST, which is for JavaScript. So from this, it gets converted to this file, and this file directly goes into your browser. So this is the last part of the presentation, building a custom plugin. So you can provide Remark plugins in your MDX Loader options, like I've given that. This is the first part. You have to provide your plugin to the MDX loader, to the Webpack loader as part of Remark plugin. Next step would be to iterate the MDST tree. Let's dive into the code of this callout.js. So I just tell you what exactly I'm doing here. In callout, I'm adding this new syntax. This is not part of any HTML. Many Markdown flavors like GitHub support HTML by implicitly. So we can, and many times people are more familiar with HTML syntaxes. So we can go ahead with this kind of format. So I'm adding support for something called a success tag. So this tag basically, whenever this is being rendered, a callout can be rendered. Sometimes within the docs we see that certain text or certain information needs to be called out, and that needs to be specifically highlighted or told. So this is how this would be written. So this is the success text. This is a syntax which we will be adding. and we'll be converting or we'll be mapping it to a React component. We'll see how. Now, this is called Markdown callout syntax. This is the function which we are exporting or providing it to the Remark as part of Remark plugin. This would receive the tree in an async callback, and I've used so this is something comes from a if you are familiar with the AST flow, you can know it better. Even I am not very good with AST. I have worked very less with AST, but this is something very basic. There's a library called Unified. This utility is provided from as part of that library, where you can iterate through the tree. You can find your own element. So right now we are finding MDX flow element. Now, if you see the example here, you'll see the type of MDX flow element, Jsx flow element are the ones which are enclosed in Jsx tags. So this is how the Jsx looks in Mdst. You can use this playground sometimes to know what is going to be the structure, exact structure, or how the things which you have been writing in MDX, how they are going to look in Mdst. Now, when I found it, I just told the compiler, or let's say the transpiler, to see if the name is success. Just convert the name to callout and add these attributes as props. So what exactly I'm doing? I'm just converting this syntax into this. I'm just doing this. Now, this is kind of a component of React, and hence when I'll be rendering the things, I can create a component callout and render my content inside that, whatever I passed inside that success open and opening and closing tags. I've created a callout component here. It receives, there's a little CSS, inline CSS. I've used an alert component of React Bootstrap. I am passing the type as variant. And this is a success alert model which I've used. And I'm converting the attributes. I'm passing them that pass an attribute with type as success. This would be passed as a prop. These two things, these two values signifies that we are passing the type as type is equal to success prop. So this is how the content will be rendered here. Now, if you this is an alert component. This was the text which was passed and the inside enclosed in the success tags, and this is how it's going to look like. I can just do a very small. I can add it here. You can add a warning, support for warning tags also, right? So here type is already being sent as variant, so we don't have to do anything here. We'll just add to add more flavor. We'll make this content a little emphasize or italic. I hope this works. Okay, this is warning, it's working, but there is no. Okay. Component didn't get rendered, I guess, somehow. I don't know why. Okay. Oh, I know. Since it's a change in next web config, so it needs to be restarted. I hope it works now. Yes. So we just added support for a warning syntax also. This was just an example. That's why I took an HTML example. There are several things which we can do here. You can use colons or let's say quotes for adding different kinds of syntax. There are hundreds of symbols available for you to use. You can use anyone to add different syntaxes. Most popularly, people use these things generally. I have seen in many extensions this kind of enclosing being used. So yeah, anything can be done this way. Cool. Yep. So this was my talk. I hope you have one question at least, because that way I would know that yeah, some people would have understand my talk in some manner.